How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your January 2019 horoscope for Gemini. So, this month is going to be kind of like really good and also kind of like, I don't want to say really bad, but it's definitely going to be rough in some areas. So at least you get the duality. You know, you guys are Geminis, you guys like a little bit of both. You do get a little bit of mix of the duality with how serious I think things are going to become, but also with how great things are going to become. So let's just start talking about it, because I feel like this whole month is really going to kick off the theme for you guys for the whole year. So starting off with January 1st, we have Mars ingressing into Aries. So Mars has been in your guys', 10th house in Pisces, where it's kind of like changes in career, maybe have some frustrations with your job, maybe you're looking for something that's more called out to you. As Mars goes into Aries, where this is his domicile, like this is his home sign, Mars can do Mars things under his terms, and he can do it the way that he wants to. Mars is going into your 11th house of friendships, of community, of social groups, of networking, and things like that. And as Mars goes into his home sign, where Mars can really, put a lot of energy there, where you're going to find yourself probably wanting to either connect more to bigger groups of people, trying to find out what exactly you can accomplish with bigger groups of people. It's kind of like, with your friends or your networks or who you associate with. Mars being in Aries in that area is really just going to help you actually accomplish something. Feel like you're actually doing more, you're associating more with your friends, you're going out more, just more of like accomplishing and doing. But as well, Mars is all about severing and cutting. It does cause some problems, so this could cause some issues within your friendships or your groups or your networks. Maybe there's someone, causing you, frustrations. Or they're kind of, pushy, or maybe you're kind of pushy. Mars going into your 11th house is going to just stir up the pot in that area. But Mars is in his domicile. Like, he's going to be really, really happy, and he's going to have a lot of power there. So there's going to be a lot of things to do. Friends are going to invite you to go and do things, and go be a part of it. It's going to be a really good time. But also on January 1st, we have the Sun hitting Saturn. So as the Sun conjoins Saturn, this is going to be in your 8th house. And this is when the whole New Year idea is really going to come and kick in, and it's going to become very real and raw. And that Sun being in Capricorn, where things are, mundane and serious, that's the kind of the nature. As it hits Saturn, it's, restarting that whole synodic cycle with the Sun and Saturn. And it's really just kind of going like, hey, this is what needs to be addressed. This is what needs to be focused on. This is what it needs to have some structure around it. And, it's also Saturn. It's going to be a little bit of a bummer. But this is happening in your 8th house in Capricorn. In your 8th house, well, I should say not yours, but the 8th house is all about death, rebirth, taxes, governments. The 8th house is basically like the most not fun house you can kind of get. And so when you have the Sun-Saturn conjunction right there, when it comes to things like debts or other people's resources and incomes, when it comes to even just dealing with fear and anxiety, and as well as change. The 8th house has a lot to do with transmutation and really changing things up. And as the Sun hits Saturn right here, I think this is really going to be the whole big boom and the whole light on what needs to get addressed right there as far as your 8th house goes. This is Saturn, where it's like, all right, what do we need to put some framework on? What do we need to break down? What do we need to, concentrate on? And with this being in the 8th house, it's kind of a scary place. This is kind of looking at like, hey, what do you need to get serious about? How do you need to go through this change? How do you need to go through and tackle these hard problems and these issues that you can be occurring? And that is with the Saturn face of being serious about it, being disciplined about it, and just kind of getting your shit together. It's going to feel very anxious. It's going to give you a lot of anxiety and like almost like an impending doom feeling. However, I really do think that if you just like, I hate to say it like this, but like, buckle down and just go to work, really tackle these issues in the most Saturn sense as possible, being mature about it, disciplining yourself, knowing that hard work's going to, putting in the hard work and putting in effort and committing to it. Committing to that change. And I think that Sun-Saturn thing is really going to just bring awareness to the whole 8th house for you. And we have a lot more to talk about that too. So let's just move forward. And moving on to January 5th, we have the new moon, the solar eclipse in Capricorn. And as we have this new moon, this is taking that Sun-Saturn thing. This is kind of going, okay, what intentions do I need to put into this area? What do I really need to look at? Because when the sun and the moon are in the same sign, it's clear like, hey, maybe that's what needs to be lit up. That's what we need to be looking at. And with this being in your 8th house as well in Capricorn, this is like, all right, you felt how serious this was getting on the 1st. Now that it's the 5th, like, let's set some new intentions there. Let's detach away, you know, from the emotionless, the emotions, the, you know, frustrations, the, you know, anxiety around it, and just tackle what needs to be, you know, focused on, what needs to be addressed. So then also on the 5th, we have Mercury going into Capricorn, where it's now out of your 7th house. It retrograded in Sagittarius. That was probably a lot when it comes to relationships and everything like that. However, as Mercury goes into Capricorn, into your 8th house, Mercury's going to start, you know, he's all about communication. He's all about thinking. So as Mercury goes into this 8th house area, this may also cause a little bit of overwhelming energy. Mercury in Capricorn is like, boy, oh boy, look at all the work I got to do. Look at all of this, you know, debt that's accumulating. It's like recounting all of the numbers to make sure you're right. And so that's going to feel like a little tight, and it's going to feel a little, cold. However, as Mercury goes into Capricorn, this is the time to really, you know, address things with the correct mindset. This is Mercury in Capricorn. This is like where Mercury is like, all right, we need to be mundane. We need to be serious. We need to handle things in a professional sense. So then, because I mean, we have more to talk about with that Capricorn stuff, so I'm not done yet. But to move forward, on January 7th, 2 days later, we have Venus going into Sagittarius. Venus is finally out of your 6th house, and your 5th house, well, I mean, it went direct in your 5th house, which is cool, but Venus and Scorpio going through your 6th was probably a nightmare, you know. Your routine, your habits, your health, it's all gunky and it's icky. You don't want it. You want to change it. Well, as Venus now enters your 7th house of relationships, of partnerships, of legal stuff, like, this is really awesome. Venus is going, you know, she's the morning star now. She is flying forward. She is looking to explore and discover. And as she goes into Sagittarius, where she values those things, she values seeking information and learning and experiencing. As Venus goes into your 7th house, where we are talking about relationships, this is really positive on that level of, like, you know, love, romance, relationships. However, I think as Venus goes into Sag, going into your 7th house, I think this is really going to look at where do you really value other people and where perspective are you valuing? Because it also is opposing your ascendant, or it is opposing your sun. So it's kind of like, you know, looking at the way that you look at things, and also looking at, okay, what do I need to see about other people? What about other people do I need to realize, or do I need to value, or do I need to search for? So that's going to be a really positive thing. And also on January 7th, we have Uranus going direct. So now that Uranus is direct in your 11th house of friends, of connections, of networks, you know, this is kind of like, you know, maybe this is the time you finally connect to a certain group of people, and you find like that one person who becomes your friend, or maybe you like them, or whatever it is. It's just a big time for positive stuff happening, very fast, fun, exciting stuff happening within the terms of friendships and relationships. And that can mean, you know, one-on-one friendships too, versus also big groups of people. However, moving forward a few days later, on January 11th, we have Mercury conjoining Saturn. And so as the sun hits Saturn, as we kind of reset this new Saturn cycle, you know, new obstacles, new challenges, new things to conquer. Shouldn't say conquer, new things to establish is more of a Saturn word. As Mercury hits Saturn, Mercury is basically projecting the message of Saturn, where Saturn is like, you need to be serious, you need to get your shit together, you need to build up, you know, walls, not meaning, you know, the emotional walls, but in the 8th house, where we're talking about fear, transformation, death, you know, all the taxes, you know, the 8th house just kind of sucks. And when you have Mercury hitting Saturn right here, this is kind of like the message of what needs to get, you know, addressed, what needs to be, you know, handled, because Mercury hitting Saturn is going to be like, boom, limitation, boom, things are not going right in this in this area, things aren't going correctly in this area. And I'm not meaning to make this like a doom scope, but like Mercury hitting Saturn in your 8th house is going to be pretty loud. However, though, when Mercury hits Saturn, it's literally like just projecting the message of Saturn. So this is the time where you want to really go, okay, like, this is very loud and clear now. Now you have to match that energy with Saturn about being like, okay, finding solutions, finding things that are going to work, finding a way out of it that's going to just basically get you by. Like, Capricorn stuff is like, it has to be efficient, it has to be effective. You got to do it the right way, by the rules. And this Mercury Saturn stuff is like, where do you need to tackle this stuff? Like, not necessarily rewrite your whole plans. However, I really do think this is going to be the time where you want to go, what has worked for other people in the past? What has worked on paper, and how can you do that here? It's kind of like, you know, not trying anything new, but relying on what works. So that's going to be a pretty big deal. Moving forward, though, a couple days later, we have the Sun hitting the South Node. And I didn't talk about this because I really wanted to talk a little bit more about it as Mercury and the Sun hit it. However, now with the South Node in Capricorn, this is where it gets interesting, because the South Node is, you know, what we're naturally good at. It's our past, you know, where we've come from. And in order to really go towards our future, in order to really go towards where the North Node is wanting to take us, we have to revisit our past, and we have to look at what did we learn and how did we address the situation in the past and how did that work. And as the Sun hits the South Node, I do think this is going to be illuminating that part where, you know, whatever you're going through with this 8th house stuff, however that's manifesting for you, this is about looking back and going, what has worked in my past, and how can I relate whatever my situation was then to now and see what's going to really work best, what's going to, you know, propel me forward, or what's going to help me handle this situation and tie up these loose ends. And so I do think that is going to be a really big deal, especially with all this 8th house stuff going on. Like, this is going to be a big time to look at the past of when you went through these 8th house stuff, like huge transformations, you know, or, you know, this could be super mundane and dealing with debt, you know, with the IRS, like super Mercury Saturn stuff. The other thing would just be to, like, I mean, the 8th house is kind of like a lot of that crappy stuff anyway. But the point is, with the Sun hitting the South Node, really revisit that past and see how you went about things then and how you can do that now. Moving forward, a couple days later, we have Venus trining Mars. So as Venus is in Sagittarius, where, you know, she's wanting to connect people, she's wanting to bring people together, going out of your way, going out more, exploring, learning new things, doing new things. That's a good opportunity for you to, you know, really meet people. And as Venus trines Mars, where Mars is like, yeah, I want to do things, I want to connect, I want to grow. Like, this is just going to be really nice in the terms of friendships, of relationships, of connecting and meeting new people, and kind of just getting, or it may not even, I've personally definitely meeting people. However, for, you know, just to kind of put a generalization on it, I do think this is just going to manifest in positive, new, like, forward movement in the terms of relationships. And it's not just love and intimacy and romance, but just people that you're close with and that you really value. So that is really cool, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. 2 days later is when we have the big day in January. We have the full moon in Leo, which is a total lunar eclipse. We have the Sun going into Aquarius because it's full moon in Leo. We have Mars squaring Saturn as well. And I really do think that January 20th is going to be like a good little moving forward onto 2019 day. Like, that's when we're officially kind of in it, in my opinion. However, as the Sun goes into Aquarius, where it goes into your 9th house, where you're out of this place of the 8th house, where the Sun's been traveling and it's just been monotonous, it's just been, and, you know, just, you don't even want to deal with it. As the Sun goes into Aquarius in your 9th house and starts to trine your Sun, trine your ascendant, whatever it is, this is going to feel a lot more open. You're going to feel a lot more connected. You're going to feel just a little bit more relieved, and you're just going to feel like you have the space that you kind of need to go through all of this stuff. But the full moon in Leo is going to be interesting because this is a total lunar eclipse, and this is that last eclipse that we have in Leo. And as this is happening in your 3rd and 9th house, the moon's going to go into your 3rd house, where it's kind of like, hey, where do you really need to express how you feel? Where do you need to really express, you know, how, you know, great you are, what your capabilities are, what you really need, having that admiration or sense of, I can't think of the word, but anyway, the full moon in Leo in your 3rd house is kind of like bringing awareness, bringing, you know, light to, like, how you can really express your power, how you can really get that validation, how you can really search for, you know, not necessarily, I don't want to say like what your heart wants, but it's kind of like being in alignment with, like, hey, this is how I feel, I'm being true to that. And while the Sun's in your 9th house, while the 9th house is all about, you know, spirituality, beliefs, dreams, far distance travel, things like that, the Sun's illuminating this area, and the full moon in Leo is kind of like, yeah, like, you can believe this stuff. Yeah, you can, you know, believe more in yourself. You can have that one last spark of, like, I have the power, I have the capability, I'm not going to shy away from this just because I'm in the face of adversity. So I do think that full moon in Leo is going to be really loud. But on the same day, we have Mars squaring Saturn. And as Mars is in Aries, where it's kind of like, you know, you're wanting to connect more, you're wanting to do more, you're wanting to put yourself out there more. As it squares Saturn in the 8th house, it's kind of like, how do you need to go about that that's actually going to be effective? Like, you can't just do the same thing over and over again and expect the same results. And as you really go out of your way this time, as you really put yourself out there, or whatever it is you're trying to change or conquer or just do in that realm of the 11th house of friends and networks and stuff, the Saturn in Capricorn in your 8th house is kind of going, hey, where do you need to put, you know, a restriction on that? Where do you need to really concentrate your energy? And what's a good way to put it? I'll put it to you this way. Saturn's going to make it feel like you don't have the capability or the power, but Mars is squaring it, where Mars is going to feel very angry and frustrated with this. And the best advice that I have for you on this is to basically, if you want to go about these new things, and if you're really trying to put yourself out there and you're trying to accomplish more and do more, like, you have to be willing to make the change that you want to see. Like, and it's going to be a very raw, sobering moment where you have to realize that. And so it is going to be really intense on this day, but I just think the full moon is really just kind of like, don't fucking wait. Like, you can push yourself out there. You can feel a little bit more. You can feel proud. You can feel happy. You can communicate and believe those things. You just have to be willing to make that change and make that sobering commitment to having to do that. So I do think that's going to be, I shouldn't say I do think, that's going to be a huge fucking deal. Anyway, moving forward, the last couple of days of January, we have Venus conjoining Jupiter and Mercury conjoining the South Node on January 21st, the next day. So as Venus conjoins Jupiter in the 7th house, this is like real, like, Venus is in Sag, where she's excited and she's happy and she's having fun, and she's going to hit Jupiter, where Jupiter's in Sag, and he wants to bring you people. He wants to bring you abundance. Like, Venus hitting Jupiter and Sag in your 7th house is like, relationships, great. You know, if you're meeting someone, cool. You know, if you're in a lawsuit, that looks really cool too. The best way to put it is, it's just going to make you feel really good about the people that you have in your life. And it's also really going to show you what else is out there, what else can be, what, you know, it's regardless of, you know, if you're in a relationship or you're single, it's just going to show you the potential possibilities that relationships really hold for you. And on the same day, Mercury is going to conjoin the South Node. And again, where we were talking about the Sun hitting the South Node, about revisiting your past and looking back, the Mercury hitting the South Node is kind of like, okay, like, not only let's address this, but what worked, what didn't work, and how can we apply? You know, this is kind of thinking through everything. It's kind of like, okay, you know, if you guys watch football, you know, a lot of the coaches play reels of like their old games and show them what was, you know, what worked and what didn't. Mercury is kind of like, the Sun hitting the South Node is kind of like, oh, we can watch the old videos. Mercury hitting the South Node is like watching the videos and writing down notes and being able to address them later on, you know, on the field. And I think Mercury hitting the South Node right here in this 8th house is like, okay, like, really look at your past, really revisit that. What worked to get you through this change? What worked to solidify that and give you the security you're looking for? Because the 8th house can deal a lot with insecurity. So as you, like, I'm just saying, the 21st is going to be like, hey, you have a lot of people in your life. The biggest thing is, like, you have these other issues that you've really got to tackle, but revisit the past, look at what worked, see what you got to change, and move on. After that, on January 23rd, Mercury will enter Aquarius, which we'll talk about in a second. And January 25th, Mars trines Jupiter, so this is making those connections. This is, you know, putting yourself into bigger groups of people, friends, networks, communities, whatever it is. And Jupiter's, you know, bringing the positive connection with those people, you know, making the positive connection on one-on-one relationships that you're looking for, and showing you what else is out there, what else is possible. And then on January 29th, we have Mercury going Cazimi at 8 degrees Aquarius. As we go into Aquarius season and, you know, the Mercury Sun Cazimi hits, this is happening in your 9th house where Mars was retrograde. And this is going to be really important because as Mercury and the Sun conjoin, this is going to be kind of like downloading the Mercury, you know, Mercury's basically getting pierced by the Sun. It's wanting to understand, it's wanting to, you know, think, it's wanting to get new information. And this is an Aquarius world, in this Aquarius sign in your 9th house, this is like really connecting the dots about a lot of I should say, connecting the dots of beliefs that you have about yourself, things that have worked in the past, all of this change that you're kind of going through. And this Mercury Sun cazimi is just going to be kind of like helping you realize, okay, what do you need to, not necessarily need, I don't want to use that word, but how can you connect past experiences, and how can you connect things that have worked, things that are in nature and in alignment with what your beliefs are, with what you want to learn, with where you want to go, and connecting all of that to make something that is, you know, I don't want to say fluid, but that is logical, that is going to help you understand yourself, that is going to help you understand the world around you, that is going to help you understand your environment. I do think that Mercury Sun cazimi is going to be very eye-opening to a lot more of your beliefs about connecting the bigger picture together, and you know, because when things make sense to you, that's when like the rest of your world kind of like falls into place. Like it just needs to make sense. And so I think this Mercury Sun cazimi is going to make sense for a lot of things. And so that's kind of January. Like I said, it's going to be a big side of up, big side of downs. The biggest thing is that like with these down parts, you've got to face them in a very sobering, serious fashion. Like, and this is for all of us. This is happening in for no matter what your sign is. This is happening in one part of our chart or another. And so this is a big theme for everybody. And I don't want to just, you know, I don't want to just hit on. I've actually been avoiding doing this Gemini one because I'm like, I don't want to talk about this stuff in the 8th house. The biggest thing is, even though it's going to be kind of like rough, I want you guys to really look at it in a sense of like, how can you be Saturn about it? How can you own it? How can you, you know, how can you dominate it? How can you get a grip on it and take control over it? And I think focusing your issues or the things that come up in that area through that mindset is really going to propel you forward, and utilize the great planetary energy we got going on. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing, and I'll be seeing you guys next month.